The Vedic god of desire, named Kama, is first born from a figure called That One in the famous creation hymn of the Rig Veda, the Nasadiya Sukta. It is said that Kama is born of That One and is the primal seed, the seed of That One. Quote, "Thereafter rose desire, Kama, in the beginning, desire, the primal seed and germ of spirit." Unquote. Kama is therefore the seed of Prajapati, because this figure called That One is Prajapati, as the work of Jan Gonda and other scholars have shown. Kama is identified with another god, Manu, in the Atharva Veda hymn 9.2 verse 23. Quote, "Stronger art thou than aught that stands or twinkles, stronger art thou than ocean, Kama, Manu." Unquote. We can see here that Kama is being called Manu and being identified with him. In variant versions of Rudra's birth, it is either Prajapati's seed or the seed of all the gods that he has emanated, brought together, or simply one of his emanations, this Manu, meaning fury or passion, that becomes Rudra. So it is either Prajapati's own seed, the collected seed of all his emanations, or simply one of his emanations becoming Rudra. Manu and Kama are closely connected, as we have shown, and Kama is also depicted as a powerful war god in his own right, quite different than how we would usually imagine the god of desire. See these quotes from Atharva Veda 9.2. Quote, "Kama the bull, slayer of foes, I worship with molten butter, sacrifice, oblation. Beneath my feet cast down mine adversaries with thy great manly power when I have praised thee. Slay those who are mine enemies, O Kama, headlong to depth of blinding darkness hurl them. Reft be they all of manly strength and vigor. Let them not have a single day's existence. Kama hath slain those who were mine opponents, and given me ample room to grow and prosper. First before all sprang Kama into being. Gods, fathers, mortal men have never matched him. Stronger than these art thou, and great forever, Kama. To thee I offer worship. Wide as the space which heaven and earth encompass, far as the flowing waters, far as Agni, stronger than these art thou, and great forever, Kama. To thee I offer worship." Unquote. So we see here that Kama is called the strongest of all the gods, and also the firstborn from Prajapati. And we will see that there is this theme of Kama and Manu both being associated with strength and warrior aspects, as Stella Cromrish further elucidates the connection between Kama and Manu. Quote, "Manu, creative fury, and tapas, creative heat, are as close to each other as are Manu and Kama, creative desire." Compare Atharva Veda 9.2.23, the aforementioned verse identifying Kama with Manu. They are degrees and aspects of the creative fire. Unquote. Cromrish, The Presence of Shiva, page 230. Kama means desire, while Manu means passion, anger, wrath, and also ardor, courage, spirit. The Gaelic figure Mil Espaina, son of Bila and grandson of Briochan, has another name, a Gaelic name that is presumably his original name. This is Galam, Galam, or some variation close to that. This Galam comes from Old Irish Gal, G-A-L, meaning 1. Ardor, 2. Fury, or 3. Valor. In modern Irish, this word is still Gal, G-A-L, meaning 1. Warlike ardor, 2. Valor or fury, 3. Vapor, steam, and 4. Boiling heat. The English translator of Keating's History of Ireland says in a footnote on the name Gallav, quote, derived from Gal, battle, bravery, etc. This shows that the meaning of valor or bravery, and also battle, warlike activities, were seen as the most common understanding of this word Gal at the time. And we can see that a word originally meaning ardor and fury came to take on a more specifically military connotation with warlike ardor in the modern meaning of the word, and also valor coming to the forefront as a common usage of this word. Encyclopedia Britannica from the year 1890 also defines the name Gallav as meaning valor and coming from the root Gaul. This transition of the word Gaul from meaning ardor to meaning warlike ardor and valor more specifically gives us the backdrop of why Gaul came to be renamed as Mil España, the soldier from Spain. The warlike and soldier-like aspects of the name Gaul came to the forefront, and he was simply renamed as the soldier. According to wisdomlib.com, Manu is glossed as passion, anger, wrath, and also ardor, courage, and spirit. These meanings are then extremely close to Gaul, especially ardor and courage, that is, warlike ardor and valor, and also fury, which was the second meaning of the Old Irish word Gaul, while ardor was the first meaning and is very close to passion. Thus, Manu's glossed meanings passion, anger, wrath are very close to ardor, fury, courage. The electronic dictionary of the Irish language online actually defines Gaul as seething heat passing into that of mental excitement or rage. Thus we see defined very succinctly a meaning extremely close to that of Manu: rage, fury, wrath, heat. Thus it would be very easy to picture how Gallav and Manu would have come from one and the same original deity. It is never explicitly Kama who becomes Rudra in the Indian variants, and this has been a main source of confusion. It is Kama who is named as the first emitted god and seed of Prajapati in the primordial moment. Then afterwards, some of Prajapati's seed becomes Rudra. Or, in alternate versions, the seed of all of Prajapati's emanations is gathered together and becomes Rudra. Or finally, Manu, one of Prajapati's emanations, becomes Rudra. When we realize, however, that, as Kramrish explains, Kama, the primordial seed and creative desire, is continuous with Manu, the creative fury, both being forms of the creative heat, and when we observe that Manu and Kama are identified with each other in the Atharva Veda hymn to Kama, then we see that all of these variants can be harmonized and seen as telling the same essential story. The seed that Prajapati emits as Kama in the primordial moment simply is the same as the seed of Prajapati or his emanations, or Manu, that then becomes Rudra. We need to think of this god as Kama Manu, the overflow of creative heat from Prajapati that gives rise to Rudra. This can be depicted as coming directly from Prajapati as his seed, or as the collected seed of his emanations who are really his own faces, or as Manu, the fury, overflowing heat of Prajapati, which is simply another name of this Kama. We see indeed that this issue is made simple and straightforward in Gaelic and Norse versions, since there is only one deity who, in those branches, is in the place where the Vedics give the two names Kama and Manu. In Gaelic myth, we have Galav, son of Bila, and his name perhaps has a meaning closer to Manu, as we have seen. Warlike ardor, fury, vapor, boiling heat. In Norse, we have Buri, auto-generating Bur, in the primordial moment, without a female consort. This is mythically the same as the emission of Kama, the primordial seed of Prajapati, without any female consort. Yet Bor, the offspring of Buri, directly fathers Odin, parallel of Rudra, and thus Bur also is in the place of Manu. There is simply one god, Bur, where in the Vedic material we have Kama and then later Manu. Finally, if we assume that the god called Twisto of the Germanic tribes is a Prajapati parallel under a Germanic name sharing a root with Twashtar, then his son Manus clearly appears to have a name most similar either to Manu, the creative fury of Prajapati, or to Manas, the mind power often linked to Prajapati. Thus it is altogether possible that Celts and Germanics favored a conception of this god that was closer to Manu than to Kama, more aligned with battle fury than with desire. And yet these gods once again are two names for the same thing, the emanation of creative heat that has multiple qualities and is often defined as some sort of ardor. The reason that the definition of desire may seem worth hanging on to, as opposed to fury, then, is that this god, the offspring of the cosmic egg god Prajapati, is specifically named Eros in Greek tradition. That is, in one Orphic version of the cosmology, Eros is the name of the one born of the cosmic egg, aka Prajapati, just as Kama is born from Prajapati, who is the cosmic egg. Similarly, Platonic tradition seems to identify Eros as that which forms the bridge from the nous, the cosmic mind, which is actually the Rudra-type god, back to the one, which is Prajapati. Prajapati being the face or form of the Absolute, or the One. Hence we once again have Eros as the being linking between this Prajapati deity and the Rudra-type deity. Quote, ultimately, Plotinus apprehends the source of all procession as, quote, an eros which the one bears to itself, and only to itself, and at the same time is productive of otherness, unquote. Thus, Plotinus understands, quote, the derivation of reality as an overflowing of eros, productive of eros. While in the one, eros is self-contained, or aims at nothing other than itself, in all derived reality, eros brings with itself a directedness to something other than itself, namely to the one understood as the good. Unquote. Unquote. As that one emits, Kama, the primal seed, in an act of auto-generation with no female consort, simply emits the primal seed from himself in the primordial moment, so also it is said that the one bears eros, desire, to himself and only himself. This is clearly the exact same theological moment and the exact same theological doctrine of the one or form of the Absolute emitting desire in an act of autogeneration as the primordial act which begins the unfolding of manifestation. Quote, the procession from the one evinces the overflowing of the pure eros of generation. It is the communication of eros at different levels of derived hypostatic reality that sanctions the hierarchical structure of being multiplicity and existence, all the way to the sensible world, including the derivation of natural forms from the suke ton panton." Unquote. Remember that the Rudra-type god, Cronus, is identified with the nous by Plotinus himself. Quote, "The One generates the nous and the soul, as well as all the forms, out of overflowing pure love. As such, Eros is already proportionately present as fullness of love at every level of the soul's conscious attainment. Finally, ever-present Eros as love abounds in the vision of the good or the One, Unio Mystica. It is in effect amplified infinitely. In Plotinus, therefore, overflowing Eros constitutes the very fabric from which reality is woven, finds its own most thriving proportion of love at all levels of being and existence." Unquote. Whether we choose to call this god of creative heat, desire, or fury, or simply ardor, we should now see clearly that Mille Espagne, under his true name Galav, is none other than this very same being. The underlying meaning of warrior ardor, valor, or courage came to the forefront in the Gaelic tradition, until this god was simply called the soldier, Mille. We then can see that Bor, son of Buri, can be nothing different from Galav, since the pattern is so incredibly simple and consistent across branches. This is the auto-generated son of the Prajapati-type god, who then gives rise to the Rudra-type god. Bestla, the wife of Bor, then is like the womb of Prajapati that he incubates the seed in while it develops into Rudra, in one variant of the myth. In some sense, Bestla is the feminine matrix in which the seed of the Prajapati-type god has to enter in order to give rise to its creation within the world, Rudra or Odin. The fact that Bestla is a feminine part of Buri is cryptically signaled by her name, which means little tree bark or bast. She is part of the cosmic tree then, and we can assume Buri is the god of the cosmic tree, since both his Irish and Vedic parallels are more explicitly identified thus. In Vedic myth, the Prajapati-type god has the cosmic tree grow out of his head, and it is of his nature, and in the Gaelic myth, this god is simply called Bila, which is the name of the sacred trees of the Gaelic tradition. She is the bark of the cosmic tree that is part of Buri, like the womb of Prajapati in which the seed develops, the female membrane or matrix of that god that then gives birth to the new and great Rudra-type god. In Vedic myth, Tvashtar, like Vishvakarman, is yet another name of Prajapati, and is a name that indicates the divine craftsman function that is so important to him. Tvashtar, more specifically, when he is treated as a separate god from Prajapati, is mythically equivalent to dwarves like Fjalar, the beings who exemplify the craftsman function as individual representatives of it. But this only demonstrates that this craftsman function can have both a primary high god embodiment and then can multiply in lesser craftsman offshoots. This may be roughly the same in Norse myth. The dwarves are offshoots or expressions of this craftsman power that is first epitomized in Buri. Buri is the arch craftsman. The dwarves are the individuated craftsmen carrying this power forward. As previously mentioned, it thus seems the most plausible that Buri is also the one called Twisto, a high god among some German tribes, since Buri is equal to Prajapati, aka Tvashtar. For obvious reasons, Twisto has been connected linguistically to this name Tvashtar. Twisto equals Tvashtar, and Twisto's son Manos seems linguistically to match Prajapati's offspring Manu, both coming from a root relating to mind. Manu directly gives rise to Rudra, as Manos also gives rise to Irmun, Irmun being another name of Odin. So we have Twisto, aka Buri, fathering Manus, aka Bor, who fathers Irmun, aka Odin. And in Vedic we have Tvashtar Prajapati, who gives rise to Manu, who gives rise to Rudra. Thus the generations are comparable in all three cases. This points to the fact that Germanics probably heavily emphasize this Tvashtar, aka craftsman, aspect of Buri, thus also heavily connecting him to the dwarves, who parallel Tvashtar in their other myths, as offshoots and continuations of this specific craftsman power. The pattern that we must remember then is simple. The Prajapati type god emerges from waters or ice. He then generates to himself the god of passion, of ardor, who is either characterized as desire or fury, overflowing creative heat of some kind. This is his first offspring. This offspring then directly gives rise to the Rudra type god. So we have three generations. The Prajapati type god emerging in the primordial moment. Then the Kama/Manu type god, who gives rise or begets the Rudra type god. Prajapati, then Kama/Manu, then Rudra. And this simple three-generational pattern repeats in the Gaelic tradition with Bila, Galav, and Eivir Finn, in the Norse tradition with Buri, Bur, and Odin, and in the Vedic tradition, of course, with Prajapati, then Kama, who is Manu, and then Rudra. It can be no mistake that the meaning of the name Galav and the meaning of the name Manu are so incredibly close across multiple complex and subtle, nuanced meanings. Passion, fury, ardor, heat. When we have understood the uncanny connection between Galav and Manu, we can begin to appreciate the warlike and soldier-like qualities of Manu himself, and we can begin to see how Mil Espain, or Milesius, the soldier who is Galav, can be the same as this Manu or Kama/Manu. In the hymns to Manu, this warlike, conquering quality comes to the forefront. Manu is indeed the conquering soldier par excellence, just like Mil Espain. He who hath reverenced thee, Manu, destructive bolt, breeds himself forthwith all-conquering energy. Arya and Dasa will we conquer with thine aid, with thee, the conqueror, with conquest sped. Borne on with thee, O Manu, girt by Maruts, let our brave men, impetuous, bursting forward, march on like flames of fire in form, exulting, with pointed arrows, sharpening their weapons. Flashing like fire be thou, O conquering Manu, invoked, O victor, as our army's leader. Slay thou our foes, distribute their possessions, show forth thy vigor, scatter those who hate us. My book, Taliesin's Map, The Comparative Guide to Celtic Mythology, is available from Amazon. Link in the description.